Stephen pondered why Chloe, his neighbor, chose to live and sleep in her car despite having a home just a few feet away. Despite her friendly demeanor, Stephen had never witnessed her enter her own house. It wasn't until Stephen eventually ventured into Chloe's house that he uncovered the reason for her avoidance. What he beheld shocked him beyond belief. The house was completely uninhabitable. Despite living across the road from Chloe for many years, Stephen didn't really know her well. He only knew she had retired and lived alone. But soon they would become unlikely friends. Every night, Stephen noticed Chloe sleeping in her car. He couldn't understand why she preferred sleeping in her car rather than her home just a few steps away. Stephen realized he hadn't seen her enter her house for weeks. Something didn't seem right. Whenever Stephen passed by her car, he stopped to check on Chloe, and they chat briefly. Stephen began to piece together Chloe's story. Seeing Chloe living and sleeping in her car made Stephen sad. He knew there had to be a reason for her choice. It seemed strange for her to sleep in her car when she had a home and a car of her own. She retired and everything seemed okay. But something wasn't right when he looked at her house. The windows were closed, the house was in bad shape, the grass was overgrown, and everything looked neglected. Stephen wondered if she needed a hand taking care of the house. One of the biggest signs of neglect was the fact that a window at the top of the house was broken and had been for some time. Stephen thought that animals had perhaps moved in, which would scare anyone on their house. However, Stephen soon found out the real reason why the window was left broken, and it broke his heart. Stephen was walking past her car one day when he heard Chloe crying. He immediately ran to check on her and found her desperately looking through the plastic bags in the back seat of her car. "What's wrong?" Stephen asked Chloe. Chloe looked at him, and when she spoke, the mystery of her home was solved. Usually, Chloe walked to the gym, used the bathroom, and cleaned up before getting food from a fast food place. Then she went back to her car to watch over things and sleep. Sadly, her car was as broken as her house. When Chloe looked at her things in the car, she realized she left something important behind when she decided to live in her car. She gathered what mattered most to her, but realized she forgot something. When Burns saw her searching, he wondered if she lost something. Chloe showed she did. She stopped searching to point to her house. "It's in the house," she said, crying. She was scared to go back inside, even though her car couldn't drive anymore. She then questioned Burns, "Maybe you can go inside and get it." Burns was up for the challenge and to finally find out what he had been wanting to know for months. What was in that house that Chloe had to escape from? Stephen took the task on himself and told Chloe that he would venture into the home to find Chloe's precious belonging. Stephen found out that she was looking for a photo of her parents that she had left inside the house. As Stephen started walking towards the house, the sight of the broken roof tiles on the front lawn made him look up in terror. How long had that roof had a hole in it? The closer Stephen walked towards the house, the more apparent it became why Chloe decided to turn her back on the home she lived in for so many years. Just a glimpse into the window showed piles and piles of clothes and garbage and papers. And the closer Stephen got to the house, the stronger a displeasing smell became. Stephen opened the front door and had to move immediately as piles of trash fell at his feet. It was as if the door was the only thing keeping all the garbage in the house from spilling onto the front lawn. Had he made a huge mistake agreeing to search this home? Chloe told Burns that she was looking for an old photo of her parents. When Burns entered the house, it was immediately apparent to him that the house was unlivable for anyone. There were piles of trash on the floors that made it hard to pass from one room to the next without holding onto the walls, and the large piles of garbage emitted a smell that was hard to bear. Out of the kindness of his heart, Stephen agreed to find Chloe's lost photo and now desperately wanted to get out of the house. But his curiosity got the best of him as he walked through the house. Was it possible that he could ever find one single photograph in this mountain of things? Stephen discovered the worst room in the house when he went into the kitchen. Chloe had left dirty dishes in the sink for weeks, causing a bad smell. Stephen covered his nose because he was worried about the air quality in the house. No one had been in the house for weeks, but Stephen wondered how long it had been like this. Searching through all the stuff would take weeks too, and Stephen wasn't sure if he could find the photo for Chloe before the house became too much to handle. Every room was full of Chloe's things piled up to the ceiling. It seemed easier to live in a car than to search through the house. Stephen started looking through old papers, hoping to find the photo. It took a long time, and the dust was so old that Stephen had to wear gloves and a mask. There's no way Chloe could have moved all the papers herself. When Stephen found an old book, he knew he was close to finding the photo. It was in a box with other important things, and it was in good condition despite the messy house. Finally, after more searching, Stephen found the photo. It was important to Chloe and was still in good shape, unlike the rest of the house. With the photo in hand, Burns was ready to leave the house as fast as he had entered. But then he saw an old decrepit bookcase. The bookcase was an odd sight to see. It was pulled slightly to one side where Burns could see a gaping hole in the wall behind it. He knew he would never have this opportunity again, so he pushed the shelves out of the way further to make his way into the room. And that's where he would see something he never expected. It looked like the hole was a door to another room, but why was it hidden behind a bookshelf? Was there another way to get in that was blocked? If this was the main entrance, it would be hard to crawl through every time. The entrance was dirty with cobwebs showing no one had been there in a long time. Unlike the rest of the house, this room was clean. Even though it was dim, you could see colorful pictures on the walls showing someone cared for this room. It was full of old toys and clothes. Burns wondered who once lived here and why Chloe kept it so neat. But Burns didn't have much time to think because the smell was awful. In the hallway next to the mystery room, there was black mold on the ceiling. It's dangerous and can even be deadly in large amounts. The hallway was so damp that the paint was falling off the walls. Burns realized the house wasn't safe without the right protection for his breathing. When he came back, he wore a special suit and mask. But he knew he couldn't do this job alone. When Burns left, he told Chloe her home wasn't safe. She was shocked to hear about the mold. They both agreed to get a specialist to clean it. Burns also wanted to ask Chloe about the untouched room because he wanted to know more. After a visit, the specialist let Chloe know that the only option left was to demolish the house, but in a way that wouldn't pose a danger to neighbors or the workmen who would have to bring it down. There was only one option, and it would mean that there wouldn't be anything left of Chloe's house in the morning. The workers who visited Chloe's house said her situation was the worst they'd ever seen. The mold was too dangerous to clean, so they called the fire department. They wouldn't put out fires this time. They would start one to burn down the house. But before they could tear down the house, they had to take out most of the stuff inside and throw it away. Because of the mold, they couldn't save much, and it wasn't safe to keep anything near it. With the help of the fire department and some volunteers, Chloe's things were moved from the house to the yard. Then they would be packed up and taken away. Chloe was surprised by how much work there was. When her things were out of the house, the fire department checked everything one last time before they tore it down. Chloe's whole town came to help clear the area before they started demolition. They even brought out a few more things for Chloe. She was thankful but still shaken. People who collect lots of stuff usually have strong feelings when others touch or move their things. But Chloe was ready to move forward and leave her old habit behind. The workers were ready to comfort Chloe, but they didn't expect her to cry when it was time to say goodbye to her home. She thanked every member of the fire department and cleanup crew who helped her start a new chapter in her life. It was a scary sight to see exactly how much stuff was packed into Chloe's small house. It just goes to show how things can pile up when you're dealing with emotional difficulties and how easily things can get out of hand when no one was around to help pick up the pieces. Before the house was burned down, a final check through the house was done by the fire department. Stephen Burns was still helping out Chloe and wondered if any of the belongings from the secret room would be salvaged. The fire department brought out a few more large pieces of furniture to be thrown out, but Stephen noticed that none of the objects from the hidden room were on the front lawn. But it seemed too late to salvage anything from the home now. The fire department agreed to burn down the house because it was in the best interest of the homeowner, and Chloe already knew that she had everything she needed to survive packed in her car she had been living in for the past few weeks. In a way, getting rid of that house would be a burden off her shoulders. As they watched the fire, Chloe and Stephen saw smoke surround the house. Chloe then told Stephen that the room where her husband passed away was there. She couldn't bear to go in after he died. The firefighters stayed late to make sure the fire didn't start again. It was risky work, but they made sure it didn't spread to other houses or put Chloe's neighbors in danger. Now that her house was gone, Chloe needed a new place to live. Her friends were ready to help her. With Stephen's help, she looked for a new home. A nearby community for older people seemed like a good choice for Chloe. She needed a welcoming place with people to talk to. The community welcomed her warmly. Even though Chloe was still sad about her husband, being around others made her feel better. She had a safe place to live without worrying. Chloe's life got much better after she left her car. She started exercising and eating healthier. She kept in touch with Stephen and thanked him for helping her. With the help of her friends, she let go of her old habits and felt happier in her later years.